this is my printed out image on a sheet of paper. I don't know, I hope you're able to look at your reference while we're sketching together. So usually if I want to, well, obviously if you want to do a painting, it just makes logical sense, it always makes logical sense to have a practice one first, just to be able to work things out a little bit. So that's why today we're going to have a get stuck in with doing a black and white sketch of this scene that we have in front of us. And we're going to concentrate on looking at the lights and the darks. And there's a lot of information in there. So, and I think in the photograph, it's not too bad, the horizon, but I did have some other shots where the horizon was also, sometimes if you think about holiday snaps or photographs that you're taking, sometimes the horizon can be a bit cockeyed or a bit twisted. So it's things like that. When you decide that you've got an image or you've got a a holiday snap of yours, you need to think about making sure that you need to think about the obvious things like, is the horizon slightly tilted, or is there too much foreground, or is there something that I need to leave out? That's usually what I try and think about when I'm looking at a composition is, does everything need to be left in? Is there a strong direction or that I've got in the composition? So that makes it of interest. So if we look at this photograph here, well, obviously this is the dominant shape that we've got, isn't it, on the left hand side? And then in the photograph, it's quite dark and quite strong. So if I'm thinking about producing this as a colour painting, if I'm thinking about that, I'm always trying to eke out, bring up the colour a little bit, or bring out the lights and the darks or the tonal values, just so I can get some interest. And I'm looking at how the eye is led into the picture. Is there a strong direction? And is there something that can sort of gather our interest in a composition? So what I like about this composition, obviously, you've got a lot of interest around here, obviously with this nice little archway here as well. But we've got it's quite nice where it cuts on the cliff edge, and then you've got the little path that's skirting along down, and it's bimbling around towards us. So it's got quite a nice little zigzag going around the coastline. So that's a good point of interest for us to think about when you want to develop it into a painting. What's weak about this as a painting is the sky and the sea, because at the moment they're both effectively washed out and grey. So I would look, so depending on your printers, I would be looking for bringing up some colours into that. So in this colour in here, I'm looking at, what colour can I see? I can see a colour that's looking like a cool, cold, jadey type green. And you can see hints down here in the foreground that we're looking at sort of more of a bluish greyish colour. So when next week we start to talk about the colours, we might try at the end of our pencil sketch to do some swatches, or I would do some swatches for you so you can see what I mean about the colours. We will be introducing those effects to get some colour back into the sea, so we can walk doing something like that. The other thing is that areas of here, like the bushes around here, they're very dark and black, and around here. So when we work on this together as a sketch, can you see they look like little mounds of spongy, look very spongy like, don't they? We're going to really need to utilise that and not kill it too much as a solid black blob. So when we had our sky landscape, and if you all saw the finished picture that I sent to you, my painting of the sky landscape in the foreground nearest to us, you could see lights and darks in the stones, although the photograph itself was jet black. So I'd use my artistic license to lift it slightly so you could see the land. So think about things like that. We still need to get the tonal variation, but sometimes in order to make sure it's not too dead, we just need to lift things a little bit more so that it's more visually interesting to the eye. We are going to get stuck in with some, or I'm going to get stuck in, and hopefully you join me. So I'm going to start sketching in the basic shapes of this landscape. Okay, so you can obviously watch me when I get started. Things to think about are these angles here, and remember when we've got straight lines is what time is it? It's a little bit off center and stuff like that. This area around here is in shadow, so it's deceptive. The actual edge of the cliff stops there. This area here is shadow or reflection of the cliff in the water. Okay, so the edge of the cliff stops there. Okay, so I hope can you see that in your references that you've got? Okay, so that can trip you up to thinking that all of this edge is the bottom, then that's the bottom of the cliff. It's not. The bottom of the cliff goes behind. All right, so here's my blankety blank sheet of paper, and I'll start sketching in. So I'm just gonna start blocking in with my pencils. So start off with the horizon line. I don't use a ruler, okay, so if you want to ban yourself from using a ruler, what I do instead is I am holding my elbow tight against the side of my body, and I'm going to use my arm to do a straight line like this, okay? So, oh, just a HB pencil will do. Yeah, doesn't have to be a light pencil, just a HB pencil will do, or even a B pencil. It doesn't have to be particularly. I tend to start with just fairly standard pencil first, and then go darker once I've blocked some bits in. Okay, so about yeah. So I'm just scraping across. So by tucking my elbow against the side of my body and dragging with my arm and my wrist, I'm able to make a straight line. Okay. And I can go with a bit of a softer pencil for you, just so you can see. Okay. Right, so have a go at doing that, drawing straight. You can get a nice straight line with the way that it starts to go. Right. Now I'm going to start to think about where I want the cliff edge to be. And I'm not going to panic about it too much because it's going quite across quite a lot there. We are going to have, let's think, we're going to have it here. So I'm looking at the angle, and then I'm just thinking it's probably going to go up like that. And then we've got this lovely, funny, swoopy shape. So I'm just really roughly blocking it in, just so I can get the angles that I want. So if you remember before, I said that the edge actually cuts in, and then we've got a little bit that comes down. And can you all see the way that I'm beginning to block that in? Do you need me to press harder? It doesn't need to be too exact. What I want you to enjoy is just getting a rough feel for how things are going to work. But, you know, it doesn't matter if the gap's a little bit wider, or, you know, you feel that it's not exactly the picture, as long as it's similar. That's what we want you to, you know, I want you to enjoy the process of the sketch. So just to make sure that you can see this, this is a 4B pencil that I'm using, but I am sketching quite lightly so that hopefully you can see how I'm beginning to build the outline shape. All right. And it just sort of folds away there, and there's some funny rock formation going on there. Okay, and then we've got funny little bits and bobs here. Don't need to do much more there. So notice when I'm sketching, I quite often, sometimes I will drag my pencil several times with my arm as a little practice before I actually put the pencil mark down. So that's something you can sort of practice and think about, is saying, oh, is it there? And sort of do it in the air first, and then when you think, yes, that's right, then put your mark down. So that's where that funny little orange bit is there. And then we've got the wiggly spongy bits all around there. And then we've got another spongy bit here. And we've got a nice straight cliff here. So that's going to cut in around there. Has anybody got any questions, or is everybody fairly happy? Once you're getting more confident with your outline shape, now you can start to press harder, and you have loads of options open to you. You can press hard with your pencil just to sort of say, yeah, I'm happy with that shape. I want to have this little, definitely want this angle here, really confident with that shape. And it's got this little wiggly bit. And I'm deliberately want to make sure that that looks really nice and sharp and jaggedy. And there's some dark creases in this stone, but I don't know exactly where they are. But I just want to give the impression that it's really a really sharp, jaggedy rock. So very quickly, just by doing a few lines, pressing really hard, you can make the suggestion that we want for this sharp rock. Okay. So actually I can come down here like that. And then you can start now you can start to colour in, can't we? And then we've got some crease lines. So what I'm looking for now is the direction. So here we've got some crease, really strong creases in here, and we've got a horizontal line there. Okay, so that's, I'm not going to attempt to do minute detail. I mean, we could if you wanted to, but it would take you longer to do the sketch. Okay, so it's entirely up to you how long you want to spend doing it. But there are a few main lines that you can see in the structure of the formation of the rock going this way, as well as obviously ones that are going up at an angle. Okay, so it's a combination of getting things like these things here on the stones here. These are big key points that we would want to put in. Okay, but it's not too critical. So that's usually what I look for when I start wanting to produce a sketch, is what are the key, you know, this is really important. We've got like a flat zigzag shape. We've got some really nice creases along here and a few lines. But make sure that when we do these together, we're going to make sure that we're looking at them in the correct plane. Because if I did a horizontal like that, and then a horizontal like that, and then a vertical like that, it's going to distort the stone or the rock formation. So it's you need to be very careful about the angles that you're producing on your verticals and your horizontals. They need to be in the correct angle of the formation of the rock. So all I'm going to start doing now, you can even use chalk if you wanted to, is once you're fairly confident with the shape of the rock that we've got here, we have got this one here, hang on, that one there, and then that one goes back, and then we've got this line here, and then there is a few creases going like that, and then this is the bit here. So this point here where the cliff edge sort of almost undercuts and goes in, this is where we want to make sure that it's going to be really dark. So you really want to go for that. So by making this dark, getting this angle, this is going to make this edge here jump forward. So we're going to come up, and I am going to just start to bring some across, and then there's another one there coming down. And then that one. And then there's a bit of shade here. So I'm going to start blocking in a minute. So let's just do that flat shape there, because we want to make sure that we get that edge. Right, let's get some darkness in here. So you can either use felt tips or you can use charcoal. So I'm just using a charcoal stick now. And I'm very lightly tapping it because I want to have have the depth, and I want to have the darkness, but I don't want it to be necessarily be too smooth. And this is just a really great way of very quickly, just by tapping it, you can get a bit of depth in a few seconds. Now picking up my fine pen, and I'm just going to go around a few of these edges here, just to start to bring out some texture. So what you can do when you want to try and suggest the texture of these trees you can see in the distance is half close your eyes. You can do lots of little scribbly bits with a biro pen, or as you saw with me, I had a slightly larger pen. There's one here that's a bit bigger. So you can start to suggest the textures that you've got. And this is just sort of done randomly, well, semi-randomly. I'm trying to suggest the rough texture, but it is lots of little marks in star formation all over the place, all lightly, just to make sure that to the brain that it's telling us that this is foliage. This is collection of bushes and trees and bracken that we can see. So I'm very randomly trying to make sure that all my marks I'm making are going off in all directions, all squiggly, all over the shop in a fairly random fashion. And so it gives it the impression of quite a spiky, busy, bushy type structure. So you know you're not going to be able to sit down in that. No. So I'm doing these sort of squiggles, but I am, with the help of that charcoal, I can now, if I wanted to, or later on when I'm more confident about how my tonal values are working, I can start to do another few smudges over the top of that. Because at the moment, compared to the photograph, this is still too light, but we've got so much information yet to put down that this this is enough for us to be able to tell us what's going on. So we've got, and I'm deliberately going to try and make the edge of this mount of the cliff edge, which is, I think I've made mine slightly longer than the photograph, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm deliberately trying to make sure that the line that I'm drawing is not too smooth. So think about that when you're drawing rocks and landscapes things. Try and do dotted lines or dashes, or think about to try and bring the impression across. We want to give the impression across that we've got this really sort of sharp, jaggedy edges. And because this is I think it will really help you to sort of sketch something like this first before you go diving in with straight away with a picture. It's really quite enjoyable, I think, therapeutic to sort of look at things and put all the hatches in and think, oh yeah, I think that one goes there, and so that you could just by doing a few wide spaces, you're making a suggestion of something. There's a stone there. It's there. So this bit is coming up here. So what I'm looking at now is this little a little shelf up here. Rocks. It's almost like a rectangle. Cutting into the rock face, and we're getting a few stones. Well, there's no particular pattern as to where you're going. All I'm trying to do is do lots of squiggles around here and then trying to follow this up. And then you can start to shade over the top, really. Okay. This is the cliff edge here, which is looking quite nice and green colour, but we know that the paint, if we were painting it, we want to be doing marks going across this way and then coming up this way, which we'll be doing next week. Okay. And then this is the dark bit here. And this bit is going to be shadow of the sea. So that will be shading into there because that is the reflection of the cliff. Doing some nice wiggly marks. And then we've got some wiggly marks along here. I can show you another tip. So because of this line that I initially first drew, I'm going to get a sheet of paper and I'm going to tidy that edge up. So I'm going to get my sheet of paper and I'm going to lie it on top. And if I've just got a mucky finger, or even with pencils, if I just smudge it with my, just drag a bit of charcoal across like this, I'm going to create a horizon. Okay. And then if I just put it on the other edge, you see I've got quite a messy edge there. So if I just rub that away, I now have a very nice neat edge. So there's a little tip for you. Another tip is, where is it? I found a swan feather this morning. And when you're doing charcoal work or pencil work, and we're going to be starting to work into our pictures with a rubber, so we're going to get lots of rubber shavings. So rather than swiping with your hand, because obviously we're going to get mucky, you can use a feather instead, or a dry brush, and then you just wipe all your work clean. So that's another Another little tip. But look out for a nice big feather. I got lucky with my swan feather. So I'm going to start to do the foliage going around the front here, in front of the path. So you can use your pencil, you know, to tentatively work out where you want these heather, bracken, I'm not quite sure what it is. And I'm deliberately trying to do lots of broken lines. Whenever I'm doing foliage, I always try and do lots of little ditty lines rather than, because obviously that's in nature, they are all broken up. But the main thing is to give ourselves, when we paint this next week, is to give ourselves the main, I don't know, main things that are going to be of interest to us to suggest. There's actually another little slope here, I've just noticed. And then we've got this plane along here, which I definitely want to show. So I'm trying to, so I forgot about that. So I'm making it very, very roughly. I'm doing all of this, as you can see, by eye. So you have lots of options. Obviously, you could trace the photograph. You could spend longer if you wanted to, working out the exact positioning of where things are. But at the end of the day, this is what you're going to enjoy looking at and then working from. So as long as you're happy with the arrangement of this, as long as this arrangement or this composition is strong, this is more important. So the photograph reference that we're working from, that's our starting point. As long as your drawing is now more important. We're using the photograph as a starting point. We've looked at the compositions, okay? We can tweak things to how we want them to, but we need to make it's more important to make this composition and this drawing strong. This is what we want to try and achieve. Okay, so I am now gonna, just as I was randomly up there, okay, I'm just going to do the same with my 4B pencil. Okay, and if just beginning to work into it, I'm thinking about them as little mounds. So I'm deliberately overemphasizing. So when I see an area like this, if I'm looking at my references, I can see an area like this. It's like a little pom-pom, like a pom-pom, and it's dark at the bottom and has a light silhouette. So that's what I need to emphasize like this. I've got my pom-pom shape, so I'm pressing really hard at the bottom, okay? And I could press lightly or have it hardly anything at the top. So I'm trying to copy the tonal value. So there's that little dark shape there, and there's the light pom-pom shape on top. So that's why I'm pressing really hard at the bottom and then leaving it on top. Now, if I'm looking at this cliff edge, we really want to emphasize that the light is catching the front face of this cliff edge. It's looking really light, especially compared to this area of the foliage over here. So here's my reference. Here's my rough cliff edge. Look, there, going down, roughly speaking. Okay, so I know I want to keep that area fairly light. So I'm looking at that shape and I'm thinking it's sort of doing that-ish. It's rough. It's cutting across there. Okay. So this shape I need to make sure looks dark here. Okay. So even just by pressing lightly a little bit with my scribbly bits. Okay. There we go. Now that edge is coming forward. We've got this dark edge line here. So what have we got? We've got this shape here coming across. That's sort of like that. Oh, and it sticks out. So we've got a crease here, and we've got a side bit. So all of that area there, all of this bit here needs to be dark. All of that bit there needs to be dark, and we need to show that it's going up in that direction, and then it's flat again, and then we've got some sort of square bit, and then going in there, and then we've got lots of jaggedy line bits there. Okay, and then this one a bit then. So now that I've done that, I've got lots of options. I can smudge it with my finger for starters. Okay. And then I could perhaps pick up my felt tip. And when I'm confident, I can say, right, I'm going to go on top of this edge here, because I really want to, and I want to outline this rock face. So I really want to emphasize how dark this is as against this. So this rectangle here and this one here, this one at the moment is too light. You see that? So I immediately need to give that a smudge and push that right down. So this is where it comes in quite useful to have your soft pencils. Okay. So now, hopefully you can see it. What we are aiming for is this. This is darker on this side, and it has a light bit on that edge. So all I'm doing now is just rubbing out this edge in different directions, because I want to make sure that the edge of this cliff, oops, sorry, I'm knocking the camera, is looking nice and higgledy-piggledy and scratchy. Okay. So yes, don't be afraid to chop and change between sometimes using a biro or sharp pencil, as I say, when you're, and just enjoy doing lots of wiggly shapes. And then these lines, as I say, as long as we've got the basic structure in, we can, you know, I'm this rock face, I know looking at the photograph, it's got lots of grooves going up and down at that angle. I'm sort of rushing, I suppose, in the fact I'm guessing where the creases are. I'm making a suggestion of them rather than spending a long length of time working out where each proper little crease is. I am making it up a bit, but that's fine, because at the end of the day, as long as it visually makes sense, then that's the key thing. So this edge here, we need to make sure that this line is going in this direction. And then there's a sweep going up here, like that. So that's all I am doing when I'm sketching stuff, is to try try and see where the main lights are, the main darks are, or trying to look at the angles of the stones. So we've got these ones wrapping up and cutting across. We've got some dark lines there, very dark ones there. So we need to show that it's pushing up and pushing across for that one. And these ones, we need to show that they're coming across and coming down. So this one is steep. So again, we need to make sure that the marked fingers are going down. And that one. And then we need to make sure that this one's going this way. So we've got lots of different planes going, lots of different angles. And that's really helps us to show the different directions that the rock formation is going. So this one here, we've got this crease up here. We've got a dark patch here. So I could probably, if I wanted to, perhaps bring the shrubbery forward a little bit. But I don't mind my path's a little bit wider. It doesn't really matter that much. The main thing is to enjoy getting the dark bits in. I'm just randomly scrabbling around where I think it is. And then there are some other dark bits here. And I want to make sure we've got this edge here. So wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Coming around there. Oh yeah. So around there is where we've got a dark bushy shape, which is very roughly done. Like that. And then we've got another one very roughly done like that. So this one needs to be a dark one. And when it comes to painting, I mean, in the foreground or in the reference photograph, we have got some very bright plants with yellow flowers and limey leaves. But I haven't decided yet. I think we'll probably wait and see how the painting develops as to whether we include those or not. I am giving myself a rough feel of foliage, but I mean, I have noticed this. So there's a couple of them. There's a pom-pom there and a pom-pom there and a dark one there. But I haven't counted, you know, how many dark spots there are individually because I'm trying to go fairly fast. And as long as you've got a flavour for it, that's the main thing. You don't need, yes, I say it's just to give you a flavour. Your drawing and what you are producing is much more important. Because if you look at this patch here, you see, at the moment my land is looking practically white because I haven't coloured it in yet. But obviously in the reference it isn't. So we're going to need to shade all of this in, aren't we? Because it is too light. It's almost the same colour as the sea, and of course it's not. So what I would like you to sort of get out of this is the way that we're trying to use implements to sketch and work in different directions and different ways and different mark makings, because this is going to make you more confident with your with your brush marks, the way that you go, because what my plan is for us to do this in colour next week. You can do it the same sort of scale, even slightly larger if you find it easier. I know a lot of people think it's quite scary to perhaps do a slightly larger painting, but in actual fact, it's usually a bit easier. So I will probably be trying to do a painting for you nearly A3 size, I would imagine, because obviously with the camera work and the angle that I've got, and this is obviously an A4 piece of paper, so my image size that I've got is effectively, so that's an A4 sheet of paper that I've got on there. So and this one, I was to say, my drawing's beginning to go off the page at the bottom, so I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit more next week, and so you can see things a bit more clearly the way that we're going. But using the using your implements in pulling these directions down and holding or scraping with your charcoal stick or Conte stick, this is going to be really useful and really helpful for when we do it in your painting work. Because what we're going to do is we're going to do the blocking the main formations of the cliff edge and the sea using watercolours, or you could use dilute acrylics, or even use acrylics if you wanted to. The way that you would mix the colours in it is a very similar fashion. Well, I can show you how to mix the colours. The names of the colours are very similar. So phthalo blue obviously exists in acrylics as well as in watercolours. Okay, but I will be doing it in watercolour for you, and then we'll be putting pastel work on top. So doing these little scrapings and flicking up with our pastels, you can start to get some really lovely marks, so that these little bushes or scrub, just by doing a few flicks, they're really beginning to dance and visually look quite eye-catching. So this will be my goal, for us to be able to do lovely little marks like ready for next week. So we're going to carry on to continue working into the picture, because I haven't shown you how to blend the sky. So that's something I can show you how to do in a minute. But at the moment, I'm going to continue to build this in a little bit more, because we've still got more information to fill in. So if I'm looking at my reference, there's a few areas here that I can flick a bit darker. That's a really dark patch there. So just by tapping my charcoal stick and flicking it a little bit, or wiggling it a little bit and pressing in different directions, I can get a nice broken shape, which looks really great for foliage or for trees. But I'm just wiggling it, pressing fairly lightly and just twisting and turning it. It's only a tiny little piece that I've got, okay? But it gives it a really nice impression of all this busy undergrowth. Gives it quite a nice effect, doesn't it? So I'm going to get my big pen, and I really want to emphasize this rock. So it's really, 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 really dark in there. And quite dark there. And really, really dark. There, look, just by doing those few flicks, it's really brought the fact that it's a bit further behind. So you really need to also do that down here. Right. When you're sketching like this, you do, you need, uh, it just means that you can get the tonal values or the lights and the darks, and you can start to build it up much more quickly and obviously faster when you're using these in combination. It's a good exercise because it forces you, I suppose, um, to be more selective. And as you can see, it's a rough way of doing it, but I think the more you enjoy it and you more say to yourself, this is a rough sketch. This is just giving me a feel for something that I'm enjoying drawing. And I think um, this is not, you feel more relaxed. I'm doing these random little squiggles in the corner here to suggest this bush. I'm, I haven't, I'm doing it roughly because I've decided it's going to be there, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if it doesn't exist. It's just my decision, helping to sort of focus the eye and the way that it works. And then I can wiggle across the top. I think, when you're doing work like this, um, you sort of you learn to look more, and as I say, your pen is dancing around in all different directions. I mean, this is just a suggestion for foliage. You could even, for some things, when you see them, you could even, hang on, you can see it down here. You can say, right, okay, well, I want to suggest something just by doing lots of hatches this way. Okay. But I'm making mine bigger and blousy and a bit more sort of squiggly. It's just personal preference, but the main thing that I wanted you to do was to just have a go at getting your lights and your darks going and enjoy sketching something. By doing this, you're emphasizing really nice textures. I mean, we've just got some white paper here, and I can swap to a pencil now to suggest some other stones or cracks in the way that it's going. In fact, there's a dark bit here actually. Hang on, no, it's down there. I've got a dark bit. Yeah, it's going like that. So that bit needs, and then that bit, yeah, that bit's got other little bits as well. But when you're filling these things in, as long as it's visually making sense to the formation of the rock, it doesn't really matter too much. That's not too bad there. And then we've got another wiggly bit. That bit's going like that. The main thing is to you to enjoy in doing all these lovely wiggly shapes. So you can by trying accurate markering, look, you can see the difference between the rock and the foliage. Right. So now I've got charcoal on here. If I wanted to, I can start to work into it more, and with my lovely mucky mitts, start to build this up more if I wanted to. So we can get the whiteness off, because at the moment, starting to look quite good. Right, let's smudge this in a little bit. And I can go back with pencil marks and look in there. We've got a dark ridge in there. Okay. Well, that bit's actually this bit's here. We've got a line. So I'm just going to that bit there, that bit there, that bit's just there, and that, yeah. Lost my darkness a bit. And that's the other thing. That's another reason why I like charcoal, is that you can work back into it again and then blend away as necessary to bring it back in, and then soften it again. Right, so we don't have, I will obviously do a little bit more. We're going to do a little bit to the waves now, okay? And I'll probably do a little bit more. We could go back with a pencil here. So I don't have enough information about this rock face here. There's lots of lovely creases in the way that the rock is working. So I need to put a few more lines going and cutting across. So we'll put that in. And that's the wrong pencil. That's a nice soft, that's a nice hard pencil, and I want a nice soft one. There we go. There we are, that's better. Right, so let's have a go at the sky. So there's not much information up here. There's a very faint, very, very faint hint of some clouds there and there. There's a slight hint of light on the horizon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my artistic license. So what you could do if you're trying to do this yourself, you could obviously go online or look at other holiday snaps, because to see if there's something similar or something slightly that you could use as a rough guide for the way that you want to do, okay? But usually when you're looking at the sky, you have a haze. So it'll be slightly darker on the top, and then you'll have a slight haze as it comes to the horizon. So if you look at the sea in my picture, there's a very faint hint that it's darker right on the horizon line. It almost fades into nothing. In fact, it's almost invisible where the sky and the sea touch there. It becomes lighter, so this already is in danger of being too dark on this side only. And then as the sea comes closer to us, we can tell it's dark around here, and we've got a suggestion of some ripples coming across into the sea. So what we're going to do first is we're going to darken this horizon just very slightly. So I'm going to do what I did before, and I'm going to lay my piece of paper, because I want to have a nice sharp horizon line. So I've got dirty fingers. You could equally use a pencil, so 2H or soft pencil, any one will do. And you could just very lightly shade over the top of there, because we just want to have this a smidge darker. And then I'm going to rub with my finger, okay, because I want to make that a smidge darker, okay. And then almost straight away I'm going to get my rubber, and I'm just going to wipe it just on the edge, and then Can you see how I've strengthened that? You see, so it's stronger here and fades out the edge. So you can use your piece of paper as a starter, okay, as a stencil. So you can preserve that nice crisp edge. And you've got this really lovely sharp horizon line. So now we're going to go for the clouds. So for this, I'm going to use a soft pencil. I'm not going to use my charcoal at all for the sky because it's quite pale. Okay. So what we're going to do, okay, is I'm looking at the direction, and I know that we're gonna want to look at some balloon clouds. So I'm gonna very lightly start hatching. Well, you may not be able to see this. Right, so what I might do is show you my other drawing then in a minute. I think what I might do is I might push too hard on this one so you can see. What I've done with this one, don't think you can see it strong enough. Right, okay. Okay, so I'll emphasize it. Right, so I'm deliberately pressing a bit too hard. Okay, you don't need to go as hard as I am, just so you can see the clouds. Okay, so you don't need to go as hard as I am. I am deliberately pressing a bit too hard so you can see with the camera work. You don't need to be as heavy-handed as this. And notice I'm deliberately trying to go in at an angle. Okay. So as clouds come nearer the horizon, nearer to the bottom, they're always slimmer and shallower. Okay, so let's see. So then to soften that, you can smudge or burnish, I think is the technical term. Burnish. Burnish, you can use a blender pencil. I tend to use my fingers, even though you can use a pastel pencil or a blender pencil. And I'm just burnishing and burnishing. Okay. Giving it a lovely smudge all over. Okay, so I have a nice soft line and nice lovely shiny fingers. Okay, and now I'm going to get my rubber and I'm going to pick out the clouds. This is where your rubber comes in really useful. And say, oh well, I can see my cloud on here. Definitely got a pale highlight, and I'm trying to rub out in the same direction that I was laying down or rubbing my pencil down in. Okay. So we're still getting the feel of that haze. And you can start, and you can obviously do as much or as little as you want to. So it's so all of this is me. This is all me pulling it all out with a rubber. Okay. So I'll do this on the big one now. Okay. So I will get my soft pencil And I'm going to shade at a fairly shallow angle. I'm going to do a little bit there. And then we're going to have some more around here. So you could, I mean, I've gone to pencil because I think some of you said you didn't have charcoal, but you could have a go with charcoal as well if you wanted to. So I'm just shading all over. Okay, and now I'm going to smudge. So I'm just burnishing, and I'll bring my picture down. There we go. Okay, and again, so with your rubber, look at what you want to do to pick out your clouds. So I can see a very slight line. So I'm rubbing out shallow angle and in the same sort of direction as I was with my pencil work. And obviously just by scraping and lighter pressure with others, sometimes you can get a fainter hint of cloud formation, or see if you press really hard, then you'll get a much stronger highlight coming through. So and I suppose the good thing about this pencil work is if you decide that there's something that you don't like, you just rub it out and have another go. I'm just again going back in again with my rubber. I'm thinking, yeah, I definitely want to have certain clouds brighter than others. So I'm pressing hard, flicking it off again, just to lift off obviously you can keep doing this until you're happy with how your cloud formation works. I might do a tiny little bit there. And yeah, I think that needs to go a little bit darker there. I don't quite like that patch there. There you go, and then you can sort of get some suggestions of clouds where that's going. Right, so that's what we're doing right for there. Okay, don't know if you can see it any better on that one. Okay, so there you go. So I've repeated that for this one up here, just to give you an idea. All right. Now we need to make a suggestion of the sea. Here's our reference. So on our, we've already marked in this dark horizon fading into lightness up here. We could, usually, sometimes with the light, you can do an occasional streak, but because it's in the distance, I don't really want to do too much of that. Okay, it catches too much attention to the eye. So what we need to do is need to bring it down, and we need to look at how the sea is rolling into the cliffs. So if I look at my reference photograph, I can see that the sea is going in at this angle. Can you see that? So if I look at, there's a couple of lines there, they're sort of pointing like this and like that. Can you see? I'm hoping you can see that on your reference. Yeah, can you see? So what we need to do is when we've got these waves, we need to do a few flicks of the waves going at this angle. So the angle of my pencil. Okay, I'll be trying to, so that's why I want to choose that angle for the suggestion of the waves coming into the sea, into the cliff, sorry. Okay, so I'm looking at that, and we know that we were doing it at an angle. So you can just at a very shallow angle, start to suggest. It doesn't, and then we know that we've got some dark lines there. So I'm doing very, I'm doing flicks, but I'm doing shallow angles, but I'm trying to keep them all sweeping across, sweeping inwards. Okay. I'm just going to do a few marks. I'm not going to try and do each and every one exactly, because it's just too much detail to try and do. But usually just by doing a suggestion, that's usually enough for us to give an indication of how the sea's beginning to come in. So it's a shallow angle, because you can see, you know, so I'm not doing exactly, but because I've got the angle fairly okay, it's sort of making sense. And then when we get to the cliff edge, we want to press harder with some little ziggity zaggity bits and lines. because we've got a really dark crease here. I can see where the cliff is coming in. And it actually is really, really dark in here. So I'm pressing hard with my pencil down here where we need to show that the shadow of the cliffs is in the water. So that's why I'm pressing really, really hard down there. And again, I'm trying to look at the shallow angle that I can see, just to give us a rough idea, because then we can see a little bit around here. But the main thing is to try and get a suggestion of the way the sea's going in, and then we know that it's beginning to spill further out. And when you're more confident as to, you say, yes, that angle's working correctly, I'm happy about that, then you can start to do a few more. But in actual fact, over here, we don't actually need anything. You can't see anything. There's nothing there. So there's not really, I'm not going to put anything in there. What we will probably do when it's when we paint it, we'll just do like a slight change in colour, the bands of colour, and all the texture will be down here and then fizzle out, because you can only see the odd mark. You don't really need to do much more than that. We've got more down here at the bottom, but which you could obviously do in. But the main thing is to give that impression that you've got the sea coming in. So I'm guessing, I'm sort of roughly looking at the picture, but I'm not trying to draw each and every exact wave. And there you go, I think that gives you horizons. So can you see how this sort of suggestion is it's just sort of sweeping in. And then when you see those light bits like this, you say, right, okay, I want that to show up as a silhouette. So just got my pencil, and now I can just do a few more lines. Wanted to, well, I've got more because I want to really emphasize that dark crease there. And oh yeah, we've got more dark lines there. So I'll probably do a little bit more touching up around here. I can go back in, perhaps working a bit more, pressing on a bit harder with the foliage, perhaps bring a bit more blackness in here. I might use a fine black pen to sort of bring out a little bit more detail. But really, it's up to you. Well, and this, because I smudged again, I can go back and go a bit darker. But and there's perhaps a little bit more down the bottom. But as for the sea, I will probably keep it fairly light. The main thing was to get this darkness coming on here. And I just wanted you to enjoy the process. But as for this area around here, I'll probably do the occasional stone and just sort of let it naturally sort of fizzle out. So I think we've got quite a nice balance the way that it's coming fizzling around here. I haven't attempted, because I'm quite like this, I'm just going to probably let it fizzle out. I haven't attempted to do any of these light flowers. I must admit, initially in my mind, I was thinking that I probably would put them in, but it'll obviously make our composition that much longer in the way that it's working. So I'll make that choice optional for you, and we'll see how it develops. But I think we're getting quite a good length of a depth, so quite a good length. We could crop this sky a bit So you can see in the reference photograph that we've only got a little of the sky before it comes to the top of the cliff, but spilling down. And obviously on the board that I'm showing to you, I've got a lot more sky at the moment. So that's something that we can think about next week when we start to sketch this up again, ready to introduce watercolour, is how much sky do we want to put up here? And if we still do decide that we're, just as in the photographic reference, we're going to keep the proportion very cropped down, then we might have a look at and see whether we want to do anything more down here, or whether we'll just enjoy doing a few marks in here. We can do it on. So we'll be able to, just do a few little squiggly marks to make it more textured in the foreground, because that's usually the big trick with artists when we're doing our paintings, is that we try and emphasize the marks in the foreground. So you're looking at stronger colors, perhaps more extreme definition in lights and darks, perhaps slightly, the stronger, the brighter color, bigger brush marks. All those those are all the tricks of the trade that we try and use to try and make sure that the foreground really visually jumps forward. And then in the background, all these extreme textures and all these lovely marks that we're making, they're going to be slightly softer and more smoother in the distance. And the colours are going to be a bit cooler and a bit more muted. So that's going to push the scenery into the distance. So I hope you've enjoyed that session.